Hello students, welcome to Legacy IAS Academy. So in last video we have discussed about a very important concept in socio-cultural anthropology, that is marriage, and we have discussed in the last class mainly about what is the definition of marriage, what are different regulations of marriage. So we'll continue the same topic, and today we are going to discuss other different aspects of marriage. So first of all we are going to discuss the functions. What are the major functions as per anthropologists that marriage serves to perform in any given society? So in this regard, if we talk about the most important contribution has been made by a well-known anthropologist by the name of Edmund Leach. So Edmund Leach has given 4 major functions that marriage serves to perform in a society. So let us try to understand one by one what are these functions. So as per Leach, first thing what he says, that marriage basically, first of all you talk about marriage basically provides spouses what we can say rights over what. So Edmund Leach said that the right is over 2 types of services. One is what we can call as the labor services, and other is what we can call as the sexual services. So that is the main purpose of the marriage. It provides spouses rights over each other in terms of sexual services as well as labor services, and here we can also as over the property rights as well. Then the second major functions that the marriage serves to perform is that marriage establishes a legal guardianship for the children that are born to the couple. So second is legal guardianship. That is also very important, because if you remember in the last class we have discussed that one of the definition that is given for the marriage is that marriage establishes union between a man and woman where the children born is considered as the legitimate offspring. And how they will be considered as a legitimate offspring? If in the eyes of law the guardians are legal, and that is the parent. So that is the second function. Third function which we can talk about is basically it provides a very development of very strong relationship. A strong relationship not only between the individuals who are marrying, but also it establishes a very strong and substantial relationship between the kin groups of both bride and groom. So strong relationship between kin groups we can say. And fourth we can say that it establishes or it provides an avenue for the establishment of joint fund of property. So these are the 4 major functions that marriage perform as per Edmund Leach. However, as more and more anthropologists have done the research on the topic of marriage, there are several other functions that we can also outline here. For example, the other functions that can group into is something which we can call as the biological functions. So marriage performs certain biological functions, such as 2 major biological functions we can identify here. First of all, obviously marriage is considered as a structure, what we can say as a structure of society or as an institution of society, where it helps in overall continuation of society. How it helps in overall continuation of society? Because it is after marriage children are born, and these children are part of the family, and family is the smallest in the society. So as the family grows, society also grows, and it continues from one generation to the other generations. The continuation of society is the first important biological functions that we can identify for the marriage. And second, also it basically reduces the mating competition between the humans. So reduces the mating competition. Both are very important function of the marriage. So 4 functions given by Edmund Leach, 2 biological functions we can identify. Other functions can also be categorized, such as we can say marriage serve certain social function. So what are the social functions that marriage seems to serve? So first of all, marriage, as we know, it provides a system and institutions and lead to development of family, and it is in the family that the inculturation of a child that takes place. So the inculturation of child is very important part and function of society that is performed by the institution of marriage. Second, if we talk about marriage, also provides an opportunity for what we can say is preservation of culture and traditions of any individual. society. So two major social functions that marriage is performing. Then certain functions can be identified as economic functions. Now, what are the major economic functions that marriage seems to perform? So, first of all, as we have discussed, same thing. It provides right or spouses toward each other in both in terms of the labor services as well as in terms of the property right. Second, it also basically ensures division of labor on the basis of gender. That is a very vital function. So division of labor on the basis of gender. And second, as we have discussed, the property rights and the labor rights. Property rights and the labor rights or labor services, rights over labor services, that is another economic function. And last we can say, but not the least, marriage also serves emotional purposes or performs emotional function in the society, because as we have discussed, marriage is not only a union between a man and woman or between two different individuals, rather it is, in anthropologically we consider it is a union between two different kin groups and development of very strong substantial relationships that take place. So whenever there is any kind of emotional distress that happens between the couples or happens between one of the kin members family, the other kin members family can come and support in all the ways that is possible. So these are the total 5-6 major functions that marriage seek to perform in a society. Now, after understanding the functions performed by marriage, let us try to understand what are the different types of marriage that we have in different society, different primitive society or simple society. So types of marriage. Now, types of marriage is generally determined on the basis of how many spouses an individual has in the marriage. So first of all, if we try to understand, we can consider monogamy, that is one individual kind of marriage. Now in monogamy also we can identify two different types of monogamy. The first monogamy, which we can call as the general monogamy, and the second type of monogamy, which is called as serial monogamy. So what is the difference between the general monogamy and serial monogamy, and what is monogamy in the first instance? So in simple terms, monogamy can be defined as marriage between two individuals only. That means there is one husband, one wife, or any two individuals, if we try to take a wider definition of marriage as per Catherine Go. Now in general monogamy, what happens? The marriage is always between two individuals. It is of permanent in nature and it never breaks. That means if a person or if a male is marrying a female, this marriage lasts till the lifetime of both or any of the individuals. The serial monogamy, on the other hand, is where a person is married to another individual for a particular period of time, and if suppose a divorce has taken place, then after divorce the person can marry some other individual. That means suppose initially this male was married to this female, now the marriage broke down because of divorce, then this male can marry to another female. So here what is happening, at any one given point of time, this person is married to only one other female. However, there is two females in his life, or two wife we can say in his life, and that is how we can define the serial monogamy. So general monogamy and serial monogamy. Now in many societies there is also a rule tradition where a person or individual can marry more than one different individuals. So in that case we can define the marriage as polygamy. So in simple terms, polygamy can be defined as a marriage of one individual with more than one individual, or at least two individuals at any given point of time. So obviously polygamy can also be characterized into two major types. One, what we can call as polygyny. Now polygyny refers to a situation where a male is married to more than one female at the same time, or in simple terms, a man has more than one wife at a given point of time. That is called as polygyny. On the other hand, we can define as polyandry. So polyandry just reverse of polygyny. In polygyny, a man has two different wives at same point of time. On the other hand, in polyandry, a female has more than one husband at a given point of time. So this is something that can be described like this. The symbol we have discussed in the last class, where the symbol of triangle represents the male member of the society, symbol of circle represents the female member of the society, and the equal symbol represents the union of marriage. Now here also we can divide it into various types actually. So for example, if we talk about polygyny, so polygyny is largely divided into three different types. The first polygyny, we can call it as a sororal polygyny. The second polygyny, we can call it as a non-sororal polygyny. And the third type of polygyny is something that is called as filial widow inheritance. So these are the three types of polygyny: sororal polygyny, non-sororal polygyny, and filial widow inheritance. So let us try to understand each of these one by one. Now, what is sororal polygyny? Sororal polygyny refers to a situation when a male member of society is married to two women, but these two women are basically sisters. That means here we have this person, he has two wives, and these two wives are in between related to each other because they are children of the same parents. Non-sororal polygyny, on the other hand, refers to a situation where the male member of the society is married to two individuals at a given point of time. However, these two wives, these two females, are not related to each other. So this is called as non-sororal polygyny. For example, in the Nayars of Kerala, we have the non-polygyny. On the other hand, in the Khasa tribe, we have sororal polygyny. Similarly, if we talk about a filial widow inheritance, it is a very unique kind of polygyny, because in the case of filial widow inheritance, what happens? Suppose that a person has two wives, and suppose that from this wife, let us say wife a male child has born. Let us say a male child has born. That means this female B is basically a stepmother of this particular child. Now, suppose in case the father of this child dies, then many society it is permissible that this child can marry his stepmother. So this kind of marriage that exists in a society is what we call as a filial widow inheritance. This is something that is seen in a Jaunsari Khasa tribe again. And at the same time, some other tribes such as Bantu tribe of Africa also practice the filial widow inheritance. Again, to revise, what is filial widow inheritance? It is when a child, a male child, is marrying his stepmother only after the death of his father. So these are the three major types of polygyny: sororal, non-sororal, and filial widow inheritance. Now let us try to understand about the polyandry. So how we have divided the polygyny? We can also divides polyandry into the same type. So first of all, we can say is fraternal polyandry, and other we can simply call it as a non-fraternal polyandry. So clear from the name itself, what is fraternal polyandry? Fraternal polyandry is when a woman is married to two men, and these two men are related to each other because they are children of both parents. That means these two male are brothers. Similarly, non-fraternal polyandry refers to a situation where a woman is married to two men at the same time. However, these two men are not related to each other. So this is something, for example, in the Kuki tribe of Arunachal Pradesh, non-fraternal type of polyandry, you will see. Fraternal polyandry is something that is very common in the Tibetan society or in the Tibetan tribe. Many times, fraternal polyandry is also referred by the another name of Adelphic polyandry. So that is the overall 5 types of marriage we have discussed: 3 types of polygyny and 2 types of polyandry. Now, in this regard, a very important work has been done by an Indian anthropologist, that is Professor D.N. Majumdar. And Professor D.N. Majumdar has noticed a special kind of marriage that exists in some tribes, and this is something that he has given the name of polygynandry. So as clear from the term itself, what is polygynandry? Polygynandry is a combination of polygyny and polyandry. And he explains that how can we define polygynandry? It is a situation where 3 or more than 3 people are living together bound by institution of marriage. However, there is no exclusive sexual right that exists in this kind of living. For example, it is quite possible that in the same family there can be 2 husbands and more than 2 wives. So polygyny is something that can be represented like this. For example, here what we can see, here we can see that there are two husbands, two wives, all are basically bound by each other through the institution of marriage. And Professor D.N. Majumdar has said that basically Polygen Entry has developed from polyandry. In initial time, there was polyandry. However, later on, as the society progressed more and more, as there is more and more economic prosperity that happened, gradually this polyandry converted into polygynandry. So that is overall what I can say about the polygynandry. Polygynandry in other countries are also referred by the name of group marriages. So both are same. Polygynandry in India or group marriages when more than three people or more than three or more people are living together in the form of marriage without any exclusive sexual rights. So that is the overall how we can describe and define the types of marriage. Now we know that marriage is a kind of union that is basically sanctioned by the society, and whenever anything that is sanctioned by society, what happens, there is something kind of relationship that develops. So there is this element of reciprocity that exists between the kin members of both bride and groom. So the next point what we have to talk about here is marriage payments. So what is marriage payments? Marriage payments are basically a kind of reciprocal relationship or reciprocity as described and defined by Levi Strauss, again a very well-known anthropologist, where the kin member of both bride and groom give each other with gifts, services or money either before, during or after the marriage. Again, as per Levi Strauss, marriage payment refers to a reciprocity or reciprocal relationship where the kin members of bride and groom give each other with gifts, services and money during, before or even after the marriage. So marriage payment, if you try to understand, as per the anthropological research, about 75% of the societies that we have in our world today experiences or take part in certain types of marriage payment. The most popular, or what I can say most dominant kind of marriage payment is what we call as bride wealth. In earlier time, the term bride wealth was also referred as bride price, and as per the research, about 44% of society practice bride price as a dominant form of marriage payment. The second most dominant form of marriage payment is something that you can call as suitor services. So we have suitor services. The third kind of marriage payment is what we call as dowry. The fourth kind of marriage payment is what we can call as sister exchange. And the fifth one is gift exchange. So these are the major 5 types of marriage payment that we witness in different societies. So let us try to understand this one by one. Now what is the bride wealth or bride price? So in simple term, if we try to represent it via symbol, suppose that a marriage is taking place. So on one side we have a groom, on the other side we have the bride. So if we talk about a society that is a patrilocal society, patrilineal society, that means after the marriage the woman migrates or goes to her husband's house. So in this case we can represent that after the marriage the bride is coming to the husband's house or groom's house. So in this case, bride wealth or bride price is referred as the gifts, money or certain kind of services that might be provided by the groom's family to the bride's family. That means the bride is moving in this direction and bride wealth or bride price will move in the opposite direction. So basically bride wealth or bride price, earlier it was considered that this is something like we can equate with the purchasing of a woman or purchasing of a wife. However, this is not correct in modern time. In modern time, bride price is replaced by the term bride wealth. Why it has been replaced by term bride wealth? Because it is considered that this payment of gifts or goods or services to the bride's family is basically to compensate the bride family for the losses they are incurring by transferring their daughter to the groom's family. So it is basically a sort of compensation. Now, bride wealth or bride price is generally seen in society that is kind of less stratified in nature. That means there is not a very strong social stratification, and also societies that is performing primitive functions like horticulturalist society, and where women play almost equal role in economic aspect of a family as compared to the male member of the family. So that is why we have the bride wealth or bride price. Now this is also one of the reason why we see in the many Indian tribal societies that they are suffering from a big problem of indebtedness, because the amount of bride price is very higher in many tribal societies, and thus they take loan for paying this bride price. And since they do not have good job or do not have good aspect of economic opportunities, they become basically trapped. They become a trap in this debt what they have taken for paying the bride price. Second is suitor services. So suitor services is something that is considered as a replacement of bride price. Why replacement? Obviously, because we have discussed that many tribal groups cannot or do not have so much resources, economic resources, do not have so much money that can give it to the bride's family. So instead of providing money or gift, the groom then works for a couple of months or sometime even for extended period of time in the bride's family, and thus provide his services rather than providing money or certain kind of goods to the bride family. So that is the suitor services. Suitor services is something that we see in the Naga tribe of India. Then the third most dominant kind of marriage payment is what we call as dowry, which is very common in even caste Hindu society of India. So dowry is something that can be considered as the reverse of bride price. In dowry, what happens? Bride also moves from her family to the groom's family, and also it is a bride's family that has to give certain goods and services, to the groom's family. So dowry is something that is seen in such society which is highly stratified in nature. Highly stratified in nature. Second, dowry is considered as a result of a prescriptive marriage practice or marriage regulations that we term as a hypogamy. So it is a result of highly stratified society. It is a result of hypogamy. And third, we can say dowry is also a result of basically less contribution that is made by the female member of family in the economic well-being of the family. For example, in agricultural society, mainly the most of economic work is done by the male member, and thus female has less to offer. So due to their lower contribution to the economic aspect, due to the hypogamy, where a woman cannot marry anyone who is below her caste, she can marry only person who is either from her caste or someone who is higher from her caste, and then highly stratified society. That is why we have existence of dowry. Now, in case of India, dowry had taken, or still to some extent has taken, a very bad form, very heinous form, where we see a lot of cases of female infanticide that is in practice because of the prevalence of dowry. We also have seen a lot of cases of domestic violence where even the wives have been killed, female members have been killed because the groom's family was not satisfied with the amount of dowry which they have received during the marriage. So it was to prevent such atrocities against the women. In 1961, the government of India, or we can say Parliament of India, came up with an act that is called as Dowry Prohibition Act 1961. However, the act still has not been able to fulfill its goal as as expected, but however still it has served as a deterrent against the dowry related violences. So that is the dowry. The other kind of marriage practice or marriage payment basically that we see, especially in some tribes such as Tiv tribe of Nigeria, or we have Yanomamo tribe of Brazil. So in these tribes, we have a unique kind of marriage payment that is called as sister exchange. Now, sister exchange is something that is also seen in such societies where women play a very important role in the economic well-being of the family. That means women are considered as a very valued member of the family or society. And thus, basically, if the marriage is happening and the society is patrilineal in nature, then the family will have to incur the loss of working hand. So to compensate for the loss of working hand because of the loss of daughter, the family is compensated by another female from the groom's family. That means sister exchange, we can represent it something like this. Now here what is happening, if you try to understand this, here these are the brothers and sister, we can say A and B, and here we have the other brother and sister, let us say C and D. So what is happening, this is the bride's family and this is the groom's family. So the groom family is getting one woman or one female in the marriage, and at the same time they are giving another female to the male member of the bride's family in exchange. So basically that is why this is a sister. The sister is being exchanged, that means sisters are being exchanged between two different family units. So that is why we call it as a sister exchange. So practice in patrilineal, patrilocal family, we are going to play a very, very important role in the economic well-being of the family. And last type of the marriage payment that we have talked about is what we can call as the gift exchange. So gift exchange is something that you will see in case of India among the Andamanese tribe. So as we have discussed, basically gift exchange is nothing but a sort of bride wealth or bride payment, bride price that is paid by the groom's family to the bride family for taking the girl away, for taking the female member away. So these are the major 5 types of marriage payments that we see in different types of society. So till now we have discussed about the functions of the marriage, then we have discussed about the types of marriage on the basis of the spouses, number of spouses. Third, we have discussed about is the marriage payments. Now in some primitive societies, some simple societies, we can say there are some unique ways of acquiring the mate. So this unique way of acquiring the mate is very, very different from the normal traditional marriage that we are used to see in our society or any other society. So let us try to understand what are the different ways of acquiring mate in the simple tribal society. So the first is something that is referred as probationary marriage. Now, what is a probationary marriage? Probationary marriage is seen in tribal societies of northeastern India as well as central India, such as Gond tribe, Gonds, similarly Bagas tribe of Chhattisgarh. So among Gonds and Bagas tribe, we see a kind of marriage that is called as probationary marriage. So probationary marriage is a marriage where basically what happens, the prospective groom resides with the family of his prospective bride for couple of weeks, and in this couple of weeks they decide that whether the bride and groom are compatible with each other or incompatible with each other. If the bride and groom are extra incompatible, in that case, after living for a certain time, the male member migrates away or goes out from the prospective bride's house, and then he also has to pay a certain sort of compensation to the bride's family, because it was the bride's family who was taking care of this groom or prospective groom for a couple of weeks. So this happens only, the probationary marriage fails only in the case of extra incompatibility that people see existing between the groom and bride. The second way of acquiring mate is something which we can call as the marriage by capture. Now, marriage by capture can happen in various ways. So let us try to understand this. So clear from the term itself, marriage by capture means generally it is the female members who are captured by the groom's family or groom himself and married forcefully. In older time, the marriage by capture used to happen when there were raids, when the tribes are continuously in conflict with each other, tribes are continuously fighting with each other, and a group of tribal members of one particular tribe go and raid the villages of another tribes, and there they used to steal and basically plunder and loot all the resources along with the women. The women were brought to the raiding tribal villages, and there they were married with the different family members. So that is called as marriage by capture, one form that used to practice by the Naga tribes in older time. Now it has been largely became ceremonial in nature. The second type of marriage by capture is practiced by such tribal society or such tribal people, families who do not have sufficient resources to provide for the bride wealth. That means second what we can write, due to lack of bride price, due to lack of resources to pay for the bride price or give the bride wealth. Third kind of capture we see is something that is referred as ceremonial capture. Ceremonial capture basically is a type of capture where no force is applied on the female member of the tribe, rather than what happens, especially during the time of fairs or especially during time of religious procession, basically in the marketplace in the front of all other tribal members. Sometime what happen, a tribal what we can say, a prospective groom, he is hidden somewhere and suddenly he springs up and put vermilion on the head of certain female who he want to be who he want to accept as a wife. So this kind of sudden spreading of vermilion on the head of the prospective bride is what we call as ceremonial capture, and this is something that is generally accepted by the elders of tribe. The third kind of capture that we see is something that is socially sanctioned. Now, socially sanctioned means here what is happening, the bride families, bride's parents are accepting the groom to capture the bride for marriage. There is no such sort of animosity, there is no such sense of negativity here. This is just basically socially sanctioned capture where the ceremonial kind of capture is in practice as well. So these are the various types of marriage by capture that we see in different societies of India as well as in other part of world as well. The third very unique ways of acquiring mate is something that we can call as marriage by intrusion. Marriage by intrusion. Marriage by intrusion is something that is kind of reverse of the first kind of marriage that we have discussed, that is probationary marriage. In marriage by intrusion, what happens? It is the female, or we can say it is the prospective bride, that basically forcefully enter into the house of the person who she wants as a husband, and then she resides and lives in the house of prospective husband, and there she is basically people try to remove him from the house but did not leave. People also try to basically what we can say bully her, do not give her food and all that. So she has to go through a lot of difficult situations while residing in the prospective husband's house. And when people understand that now this female will not go away from house, she really is very adamant to have this person as a husband, then finally the people also accept her as a wife, and then the marriage is done as per the religious ceremony or as per the tribal ceremony. So this is a very interesting case of marriage by intrusion that is seen in tribes such as Birhor tribe of the East India. You will see the instances of marriage by intrusion. The fourth unique kind of marriage is something that we can call as marriage by trial. So clear from the term itself, what is marriage by trial? Marriage by trial is practiced in certain tribes, such as in India, it is practiced by Bhil tribe of Gujarat and Madhya Pradesh. So in this case, what happens? The main member of the society, or what we can call as in simple terms, the prospective groom has to prove his prowess. And how he proves his prowess? There are several triads are there. For example, in the Bhil tribes or sometimes in the Gond tribe, what happens? Suppose that in the central we have a coconut tree, and then what happens? Around that coconut trees, it is the female member of the tribes that form a circle. So this is the female circle, and the male members are somewhere outside of the circle. So several male members are there. Now what is the task of these male members? They have to fight. Fight means basically they have to overpower the female members who are protecting the coconut tree, and then they have to climb on this coconut tree and eat the coconut. So that male member who is able to break through the circle of females, circle of women, climb on the coconut tree and then break and eat the coconut, he is accepted as a prospective husband, because he has proved and showed his prowess in this kind of tribe. So this is the one way of marriage in the Bhil and Gond tribe of India. So that is the marriage by trial. The last type of marriage, what we can talk about the ways of acquiring mates, is something that we can call as marriage by mutual elopement. So this is something that is practiced in many tribes. The one major tribe that practice this way is the Santhal tribes of Jharkhand and West Bengal. So in the Santhal tribes of Jharkhand and West Bengal, what happens? This is something that is practiced when the husband and wife, or what you can say bride and groom, are basically they want to marry each other, but they do not have the blessings of their parents, they do not have the blessings of their elder. That means what we can say, that the elder member of their family do not accept this marriage. In that case, they elope with each other mutually, they run away from their families, they marry somewhere in the temples or something like that, and then they come back, and since now they are married, society has to accept them, family have to accept them. So this is another ways of acquiring the mate. So these are the 5 major ways of acquiring mate in the simple societies. Apart from what else we have discussed, then many societies also you have the provision of sister exchange. In some societies you have the suitor services, and in some society you have the way of paying price, and then kind of earlier time it was considered as buying the wife, now it is considered as a compensation for the loss of the women member of the society. So that is all about the ways of acquiring the mates. So that is the major themes that we have to discuss in the marriage chapter. One last topic that we can discuss, that also about which UPSC has asked several times question, is what is the situation or placement of live-in relationship in the institution of marriage? What is the placement or place of live-in relationship in the institution or within the ambit of marriage institution? So in this case, if we try to define what is a living relationship, so anthropologists have defined living relationship as a long-term relationship between a man and woman where they are living with each other in a emotionally and sexually intimate relationship. Now, if we try to understand this and try to equate it with a definition that is given by G.P. Murdoch in his book Social Structure, that was written in 1949. Now, G.P. Murdoch has defined marriage as a relationship that develops due to union between a man and woman, where there are 3 important ingredients. First is there is a residential cohabitation. That means both are living together in the same house with each other. So, residential cohabitation. Second is there is sharing of economic resources. That means in this kind of relationship, no one has their own individual resources. Once marriage is done, the couple, the spouses share the economic resources with each other. So sharing of economic resources. And the third point which he highlighted was that there is a formation of nuclear family. So if these 3 things or these 3 ingredients we can say are present within the institution of marriage, within the institution or within the relationship between 2 spouses or 2 members, then it can be considered as a marriage. So if we try to equate on these ingredients in the living relationship, it basically fulfills all the functions, it fulfills the definition of the marriage. However, living relationship is something that anthropologists still consider not to be same as marriage, rather it is still considered as a precursor to marriage. Even in the Western society, where this is very common way of living, it is not seen as the end goal of the life, end goal of the family institution, rather it is considered as a precursor to marriage, where the people living together check their what we can call as that if they are living together, they check that how much compatible they are, whether they are ready to live with each other for extended period of time, whether their ideas, whether their goals, whether their thinking thought process match with each other or not. So in that case, it is considered as institution that is precursor to marriage. Now we talk about the case of India. So India will not have any special legal principles or legislation that legalizes the living relationship. However, Supreme Court has every now and then given certain judgment in this case. And one judgment was Sarma versus Sarma case, where Supreme Court has said that if 2 individuals are living in a living relationship for a very long period of time, it can be equated like a marriage. This was a case where Supreme Court was deciding that whether the wife after separation or whether the female after separation is what I can say eligible for alimony payment or not. So in that case, Supreme Court is clearly taken a stand that yes, even if they are not married legally, but they are in living relationship, it can be considered as a kind of marriage for granting of alimony and after payments. Apart from that, if you talk about that, what is the reason behind the rise of live-in relationship? So anthropology believe that several reasons are there. There are a lot of advantages that live-in relationship offers that marriage does not. For example, the first thing is that it provides a sense of freedom without a lot of responsibilities. So freedom without responsibility. Second, it is much more easier to dissolve. So that also provide a sense of freedom to the people. So easier to dissolve. Third, it helps in checking the compatibility of the partner. Compatibility of the partner. And fourth, in many cases, for example, in India as well, many times live-in relationship has emerged as an alternative in the cases where the parents of the husband and wife, or what you can say, parents of the couple, might not agree to marriage because of the restrictions that we have in traditional society, the caste restriction or the religious restriction. So basically, it is an alternative. You can consider this as an alternative to the institution of marriage due to social pressure. Due to social pressure. So these are certain advantages that marriage offers. However, many people, especially the traditional generation, the older generation, they believe that live-in relationship is bad because they believe that it is diluting the importance of marriage in the society. It basically, they fear that the morality behind the marriage, the functions that marriage performs, that is something will be diluted if live-in relationship become a norm rather than exceptions. However, we also have to understand that live-in relationship is something that cannot replace marriage. If we try to conclude it, we have to understand that live-in relationship has and will not emerge or has not emerged as a replacement of marriage. Rather, we can consider this, it is an institution that has emerged within the ambit of marriage, but not to replace it. It is just, as we have discussed before, is something that is precursor to the marriage before husband and wife can solemnize their vows. That is all about the living relationship. So I hope you understood about all the various themes that we have discussed in the topic of marriage, which is a very important topic in the socio-cultural anthropology. Now, one last thing which we can talk about is, many times, as you know, marriage is a union of two different individuals, and sometimes marriage ends up in what we can call as divorce. Now, generally, if we talk about, it seems to us that divorce is very simple in the modern societies, and maybe if we talk about tribal society, it will be very complicated. However, that is not the case. In the primitive societies, tribal societies, the dissolution of marriage is much more easier as compared to dissolution of marriage in the modern societies, because in tribal society they do not have go through all these legal processes, go through the family courts and all. Rather, they simply have to dissolve the marriage in front of the elders by taking part in some ritual practices. Now, there are valid grounds on which the tribals or tribal society can dissolve their marriage. The most important ground is adultery. That is considered as the very significant ground of dissolution of marriage. And now here what happens, for example, as you have discussed, there is a tribal societies where the bride wealth, bride price, payment of bride price is very common. Suppose that if the marriage has dissolved or if divorce has happened due to the fault of the husband, in that case the bride price will not be returned to the husband's family. On the other hand, if the divorce has happened due to the fault of the wife, in that case the bride price has to be returned by bride's family to the groom's family after the dissolution of marriage, after the divorce. So that is something that you can briefly understand about the divorce as well. So that is all about the institution of marriage. We'll come again soon with another interesting topic, that is about the family. Second very important topic in the socio-cultural anthropology. That is all for today. Thank you very much.